So, Selena Samuela, firstly, welcome to Golf Yourself Healthy. I cannot tell you how pumped and stoked I am to have this conversation. Um, been looking forward to this one for a while now. So, I always like to have a habit of checking in with my guests first and foremost. So, how are you doing? How are you feeling today, Selena?
Thank you. It's so nice to be here. And likewise, I'm also pumped and stoked to have this chat with you. I'm feeling great. I'm in Florida. It's a sunny day. It's like 78 degrees. I can't complain.
Fantastic. Well, it's a bit of a far cry from what it's like here in the UK at the moment, but I'm sure things will look up soon enough. And yeah, so Selena, I feel like a good place to start is let's just talk a bit about your golf first of all. Golf, if I read right, so. Have you taken it up in more recent times? Did I read somewhere that it was kind of like a pandemic thing for you? Is that right?
Yes. I'm
Yeah.
totally a pandemic golfer. So that like big increase in participants during the pandemic, that's me. I'm that person. Um, and I swung a club for the first time in 2019, and that's when I met my now husband. He was my boyfriend at the time, and he was just he was a very passionate golfer, and I really didn't understand. I didn't understand how obsessed with golf he was at the time, because I didn't understand the obsession that golfers have with the sport. You think, okay, someone plays golf and you're like, okay, that's cool, but it's like it's it's not a normal hobby. Like when you get into this and you really get into this, it's like a really big part of your personality. And like um so anyway, so yeah, I swung a club for the first time in 2019, and like I kind of casually went to Chelsea Piers with him, and I was like, oh, this is fun, whatever. Then when the pandemic happened, we kind of were forced to start living together, and that's when I realized I was like, oh, this is serious. This is like really like what he does all the time, and we ended up living at his parents' house in Westchester, New York, and they lived on a golf course. So it was kind of like the natural thing to do. Like I had access to this golf course. I would just go out there and play on the par three by myself. And I just figured it out, and I became really obsessed with it myself. And
Love it.
that's all. Yeah. And then,
Love
it's
love to hear
history.
that. Familiar story, and I just want to lift the hood on that even a little bit more, just because I've had a few listeners, friends, whatever, kind of that listen, write to me and say, for example, the guys out there will say, "Chris, my wife really doesn't get it. She doesn't understand what it is about golf, right?" And so I'm just curious because you've just said, from what I'm hearing, there was a point in time where equally you were just like, I don't get it, but what is it about golf? And then it got you. So like,
Yeah.
how do you reflect back on the pre golf Selena and the post golf Selena? What have you learned?
That is such a good point. I think there's like kind of two things I want to say about that. So I think the first thing I want to say is pre-golf, Selena, I actually never saw the sport as being for me. And I think that might differ a little bit for folks in the UK versus folks in the US, because from what I've actually never been to the UK. I've only been to Ireland. But when I went to Ireland, what I experienced was that golf was so much a part of the culture. It's like much more egalitarian. Like the best courses are actually public courses.
Mm,
People that are local are members of those wonderful courses. They caddy. It's like, so it's just really ingrained in the culture. And it's like, it doesn't really matter where you're from, like economically or your status, like kind of everybody plays golf. Whereas in the US, growing up, you know, I first of all, I moved to the US when I was 10 years old. And before that, I lived in Italy. And I didn't even know golf existed then, because I grew up in a small farm town, and like just it didn't exist. But then
mm,
when I moved to the States, I was introduced to it, but just through a lens of, this isn't for you. This is for wealthy men, and actually wealthy white men. And that's
mm.
just all that I saw. So it was like, okay, I just don't have access to this. It's nothing that I'll ever do. Then, life went on, and I became, older and interested in other sports. And then I met my husband. And I still kind of was under the impression that that's what golf was about. I didn't really understand that there was an access point I just was unaware of it. There are public courses, there is a way to buy a used set of golf clubs and get out there and be a part of it. And it actually is such an asset here in the US, especially for a woman, to pick up the game of golf, because it's used in a lot of different ways, like in business, and it can really be beneficial for your career. You meet so many people from different places. So I'm actually really passionate about sharing about the game of golf with women specifically in this country, because I think that it can really be an asset. Um,
Mm.
but so pre Selena, didn't think golf was for me. I didn't see myself in the sport. Then once I realized, oh, actually there is a little bit more to this, and like I can be, involved in this. Um, and I just realized that it was like so special, because it challenged me in a way that nothing else has ever challenged me. So this is gonna sound so it's gonna sound maybe like little like I'm full of myself, but generally I've been like good at sports. Like,
Hmm.
I decide I want to run, and I run a marathon and I run it well. I can qualify for Boston. Or I surf and I can surf well. I pick up snowboarding, and I can generally like do things and learn them and do them well and pretty quickly. Golf was not like that. Golf was not like that at all. It didn't really matter that I was, very in great physical shape, or that I've been a good athlete in the past. It required so much more of me, not just my physical prowess. It required a, a, essentially a meditation practice. It required a centering. It required me to be humble. It required me to continue to show up in spite of essentially not seeing results for a long, long time, and trusting trusting that there is like light at the end of the tunnel. So it required like a different kind of resilience, not the physical kind of resilience that you need when an endurance, right, when you're running a marathon, or the physical kind of endurance I needed to stay in the fight when I was boxing. It required well, actually kind of a similar experience. Boxing, you're getting punched in the face, but golf, you're getting like emotionally punched in the face.
Yeah.
So
Constantly, constantly,
constantly.
every time you play. Yeah.
Yeah, so it was just I just felt like it was a really um it was teaching me life lessons in a way that I thought was really special, and then the reward was really wonderful when you do start seeing results. You're like, oh my God, like I can't believe, like that something about that feeling. It's almost undescribable, like the feeling of when you connect and you compress the ball and it goes where you want it to go. I
Oh,
don't know. It's just like,
I know it's incredible. It's just so unique, isn't it? It's just so truly unique. And I think you've articulated that so well there. I'm going to go straight to. I said to you a moment ago before we went on air how your Instagram page, your social media, is a treasure trove of inspirational content and quotes and perspectives and reflections. And one very recent one that you put out there about golf was your four top truths about golf. And I'm gonna read them out for the listeners' benefit here, right, Selena? And I'm gonna major on number three and number four. So you said number one, you're on your own journey. Don't compare. Focus on your own game, not anyone else's. Love it. Couldn't agree more. We talk about that regularly here. Number two, keep your expectations in check. It's better to be pleasantly surprised than disappointed. Number three, focus on what's within your control. Don't let a bad lie or a shitty bounce get the best of you. Your next shot is always the most important one, so make sure one bad shot doesn't turn into a second. Amen to that. And number four, stay in the present and try to remember the immense privilege it is to just be where you are doing what you're doing. And I responded to you on that and I said, here at Golf Yourself Healthy, our strapline that I kind of start and finish every episode with, and is all over our content, is embrace the rough and cherish the fairway,
I love
grounded
that.
in the belief, in my personal experience of how adversity has shaped my life. You mentioned the word resilience a minute ago. So I wanted your response both then when I replied to you and now tells me, that you get that. What is that when you hear that? What does that mean to you? Embrace the rough and cherish the fairway.
Ah, I love that. Um, I think embrace the rough and cherish the fairway. I don't want to answer too quickly because like maybe something will come to me.
Sit with it. Just take as long as you need.
Embrace the rough and cherish the fairway. Yeah, I think, something that it may sound cliche, but something that I think a lot of people talk about in mental health that we talk about, the only way out is through.
Mm,
And, when we land in the rough or we're in the sand or in a, or even metaphorically in life, like when you're in the rough,
yeah,
um, you can't go back in time, you know? Like as much as we may want to, it's not like something that we can physically do. And so embracing where you are, the acceptance can then bring you to a point of grace, right? Because you have to. And then from there, you can move forward in a way that that's, you can positively move forward. You can advance the ball. Because living in the anger or living in the, is only then you're still staying in the past. You're still staying um, in the rough, essentially.
um, well, exactly right. Because if you, yeah, to play on this even more, like the chances are, if you just stay in that, just kind of bathe in that anger and that resentment, then the chances are the next shot you hit is probably going to end. You might not get out the rough. So it's trying to channel that adversity into, okay, how can I use this to become stronger? Um,
Absolutely. And I think
yeah.
also something you just touched on too. It's like you said you might not make it out of the rough. Well, yeah, you might not in either scenario. But like so you have a choice, right? So you could approach it and be so angry and feel terrible about being in the rough or being in the sand and hit your shot in anger, or you can choose to hit your shot with some grace and some semblance of acceptance. And it's like, well, which one, and which one would you rather choose? Would you rather choose to feel, less angry, or would you rather choose to feel? So it's like
Yeah,
you're still in the same spot.
totally. And you mentioned mental health a second ago, and you make me think about how, so if in the golf context again, the traps, the sand, the rough are typically those areas that most golfers want to avoid. Okay, but um, if you then bring this back to mental health, we all have mental health, and some people, men especially, are known for avoiding talking about it. Let's say, for example, but it's almost like we don't want that adversity. Like we're almost worried that by putting ourselves in the rough, and that in this mental health context is talking about it, will bring you down. But you almost have to. The point here is you have to endure that adversity to actually learn from it and become better for it. Essentially,
Yeah. Yeah. And then, like, the better you get at weird lies and sand shots or whatever, like, the better chances you have of being able to not be worried about it once you do end up in those places.
yes.
And then sometimes it's kind of fun too. Like, I don't know, like when my husband has a super long drive. And sometimes that long drive can be errant and it puts him in weird places. But then what's really cool is that like he's also gotten so good at trick shot. He's a like a zero, he's a scratch and sometimes he goes below. He's a
Mm,
plus
mm.
sometimes. So he's very good, but he's gotten so amazing at like shaping shots and like the only way that he's gotten amazing at that is from literally being in precarious situations on the golf course. If every drive or if every shot was perfect, then he would never need the practice. He would never need to have learned to do those really cool to shape shots that way. And it's so fun to watch. And I'm sure it's fun to play that way too, like
Yeah,
if every shot was that way, then maybe you'd be
completely.
stressed out. But it's kind of cool when you're like, oh, all right, I'm going to try to like I have to get it through these trees. And then I need to kind of like, shape it so that it lands on the green and the green is all the way. There's a dog leg
Completely.
left or whatever, whatever it is. It's like, it's cool.
I think there's extending this even further. I think there's almost something there using your husband example of when I've talked to a few people on this podcast, let's say in particular, like psychologists or golf coaches who work with elite professionals, and this idea about how even the top professionals, they have mental health and they have to embrace the rough too. So in your husband's case, just because he's an amazing golfer, like everyone, like we're not, none of us are immune from
Yeah,
these challenges of life and mental health, and right. So, and it's
totally.
important we always remember that and don't needlessly have people on a pedestal that, they're human beings too, right? So,
Totally. I also think another cool metaphor too with that is that like, okay, so, you know, you have to have been in the rough quite a few times to be able to like learn these cool trick shots or to be able to shape shots. But also sometimes there is no outlet and you have to take your medicine and just chip your ball back to the fairway, no matter who you are. Sometimes that like, you know what I mean? So
mm,
I think that also is another thing that's so cool about golf is that it humbles everybody. It doesn't matter how great you get at the game. Like, sometimes
exactly.
you get a bad break.
Exactly right. Love it, love it. I feel I could go on for days with this, but we're not going to. Let's move on and sort of. I love the metaphorical chat, and I want to move it on to speaking about. So your background and your professional work in the fitness industry. I read something. Uh, well, actually, do you know my discovery of? As I said to you before, Selena, I'm a diehard Peloton. Is there a nickname for people that use Peloton? By the way,
I don't know.
Pelotoner.
Maybe like Peloton members, Pelotoners. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't. Well, I'll go with Pelotoner. I've just made it up right
Okay.
now. But so let me share with you the kind of the moment of inspiration I had when so I'm just in there in my little home gym and I've got my TV on and I'm sort of thinking I want to do a strength class, or let's do something, just scroll through the menu in Peloton, and up flashes Selena Samuela golf program. I'm like, say what now? And I'm thinking, wow, okay. And so then I went and I read an article, I think it was golf.com that you were interviewed in. And essentially, if I'm not mistaken, what I read there was this is the first time that Peloton have put out a program that is for a specific sport. Is that right?
Yeah, it was the first one. We have a few more now. I think they had a strength for skiers that just launched. I think they did one for soccer. But I think golf really resonated with people because, with golf, so many people play golf and are so passionate about it versus like, it's just one of those things that like you never give up and you can do it into your old age and you can progress in different ways,
Mm,
no matter what, you know no matter how old you get or what happens with your body, there's still ways around it. And that's something I learned in TPI is that, everybody has their own individual swing. And there are some things mechanically that your body won't be able to do, but you can find ways around it and you can find ways to build a swing that makes sense for you.
okay.
And so that's why I think, golf sticks around that's why it's like, like my husband's grandfather who passed away last year, but he was, in his late 80s playing golf.
How many
Like,
other sports
how many
can?
other sports can you say? Yes,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah, yeah. Let's again, there'll be plenty of my listeners that recognize you, that probably attend your Peloton classes and stuff, but there'll be others who don't or are unfamiliar with you. So maybe can you tell us a bit about like what's your kind of area of subject matter expertise as it relates to fitness? Like, what are your areas you cover?
Yeah, I mean, I'm really interested in, you know, I think the thing that's most important to me, especially now that I've become a mother, is thinking about what we need to do to kind of to make it so that we can stick around longer for our kiddos, you know, and not just stick around and just be kind of like passively there, but really be active participants in their life. So I think my number one passion is really when I'm thinking about fitness, I think about health and I think about longevity. And so, you know, kind of doing the things that make sense for us to, when we're thinking about optimizing for, you know, bone health, muscle retention, cognitive function, and those types of things. But then I also have this other passion because I am so passionate about my hobbies and especially golf that, and I do recognize that it is something that we can do really like for kind of forever. I really do find a lot of fulfillment teaching this type of fitness that is geared towards specifically um, improving your hobbies, improving your sports, whether it's running
Mm.
or golf. And there's so many things that you can do in strength that can support your swing or support your athletic endeavors.
Yeah. I'm going to ask you about running then, because that is very
Mhm.
much one of those core areas that you cover, and people will be able to attend your classes in Peloton, say for example. So I love running. I love what I love about it is what it does for me is in here, right? The mental health benefits of running for me.
Same.
Again, much like my golf, I don't consider myself. I'm not a fast runner. I just do it to blow off the cobwebs and just to cut through those black clouds or grey clouds or whatever. And when I've done like a 5K, whatever it is, a three mile run on a Saturday with my dog, at the end of it I'm like, oh, you know it was hard for me to get out of bed and haul my ass over there and do it, but I'm so glad I did.
Yeah.
And I guess, yeah, what is running to you then? Tell us about your running
Honestly,
passion.
it's very similar. So running's always been kind of supplemental with any sport that I was an amateur boxer before I became a Peloton instructor, and running was such a huge part of our like training process. So it always was supplemental, but it for at least when it came to sport, like I never was a competitive runner in the past. But I've just always felt so good at doing it, and like you really described it perfectly. It really is almost meditational. Sometimes I like to run with music and just like kind of go ham. But a lot of times I'll even take the headphones out and just focus on breathing. And it's just kind of my like Zen. I'm not very good at just sitting still when I meditate. It doesn't really work. I don't know. I've tried so much, and I'm sure if I practice more, I could get better. But I've found a way to do it in running, and I think it could be considered certainly a mindful practice that way, where it's like really focusing on breath and cadence and stride and nothing else. And that's just, you get to kind of clear your mind that way. Um, and yeah, I also just, I love, I love the endorphin high. I'm an addict
Mm.
when it comes to that. Like there's something about that is just so wonderful. Um, and yeah, and I guess, going back to fitness, like, there are ways to work out and to train, to ensure that you kind of can stay healthy to continue to do those things for a longer period of time. And that's why if you take my classes, you see me teaching a lot of unilateral work, offsetting, things that really focus on balance and stability, because those are things that are going to benefit you long term when it comes to these kind of hobbies and extracurriculars, including running, including golf. But it's also it's also good for, functionally when you think about the things that we're doing day to day. We're
Mm.
not like working on one plane, we're usually moving in multiple planes.
Definitely. The As far as running is concerned, and any relationship, if there is one, between it and golf, I mean, how, in your mind, could you see golf and running coexisting together? If anyone out there is listening to this who's like, I really love both things, how can they live in perfect harmony? Is there like an overlap in terms of muscles, or do you get what I mean?
Oh yeah, totally. I think I just touched on it a little bit. I think running is single leg work, and golf is a lot about balance and stability. So there surely are benefits. Also, I mean, the easiest one is the endurance that you naturally accumulate as a runner is going to help you on the course, especially if you're walking courses. And I know a lot of courses in the UK are walking courses. And
Absolutely.
there are quite a few here in the US as well. I'm a member of one course that's does not allow carts at all. Um, yeah, I think, that's kind of the more obvious ones, but I do think also the mental toughness stuff can definitely translate as well, especially when you get into some of the like more endurance style running, or, where it's just like, oof, like this is brutal, but I'm going to do it anyway.
Yeah.
that kind of that kind of thing where you're just like, or you're schlepping through around, and I don't know about you, but for me, I'm like, oh, golf would be perfect if there were like 15 holes. Like the last 3 holes for me are just like so hard to get through. They're so miserable. That's when I kind of
Ah.
I fall apart more often than not. Um yeah, so it's hard to schlep through those last 3 holes. So I think like that's where like kind of running and golf can coexist. Also, I have heard, I've never participated in these, but I have heard that there are like golf running competitions where you like
Oh,
run. It's like speed golf. That's what it's called. It's
speed
like speed
golf.
golf.
Yeah,
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 yeah, yeah.
yeah. I've been so I've been I've been chatting on Instagram DMs a guy called Luke Willett, who's the British #1 in speed golf, and watching
Stop.
some of
So
his
cool.
content is just like, wow, like just it fascinates me more than anything. Just that and maybe that's it, right? There's that combination there. Those It's amazing to see. But what was I about to? I've lost my train of thought there. I was gonna. We'll see if it comes back to me. But oh yeah, that was it. What I so relate to what you say about holes 16 through 18.
Yeah. They're
What
so
what's
brutal.
what's going on there? Like, what is that all about? I don't know, because I think for me, physically, what happens is, I mean, it's a combination of mental and physical weariness when you get there, because the legs are starting to just be a bit like feeling a bit heavy now, and especially when you're walking. Um, and it's that trade off, right? Because I think, especially in British culture, you're right. I think over here, people can get really uh, sort of really funny about like carts and stuff. Like, no, this is the way the game was always meant to be
Yeah.
played and stuff, which is great. And from a health perspective, sure. But then there's that trade off against the performance aspect as well, or the scorecards, because so I don't know, like, what's your top tips? Or have you cracked the
Yeah.
code yet as it relates to seeing it through to the end, to the 18?
Yeah.
What do you do on those last few holes?
Yeah. So I do think that actually, working on your cardiovascular capacity is certainly a benefit to something like that. Which is why I think, even like doing kind of like high zone two, low zone three, um, cardio type workouts where, you're like light jog, easy run, power walk, do that for like a longer period, like a 60-minute session, like doing that at least once a week, on top of some other more like moderate, um, sessions, I guess, throughout the week. I think that can be so helpful.
Hmm.
Um, the yeah, I mean, it's also sleep, but I think the more the more in shape I am, certainly the the more in shape I am, certainly the easier it is to kind of get through those last few holes. But I think that it's more than just the physical, right? Because it's also like very mentally draining. And
Yes.
maybe if you're having a stellar round, or if you're having an awesome back nine, then it's amazing how like you actually totally feel fine at hole 16. You're like, oh, like I had a couple birdies, like what are you talking about? I could play another 18. You're feeling like really good. But so I think like there definitely is something to say about the mental aspect of like, trying to kind of, again, stay in the game, and like that resilience and that kind of practice of mental toughness that comes in to those last 3 holes. And I think my tip there would be, I don't know, when, if you want to, whatever the thing that you practice doing is what you're going to get good at. So if you you want to get good at doing hard things, you got to do hard things.
Mm.
So, and I've heard Nelly Corda say this before. I think it was Nelly Corda. It was somebody on the LPGA. I think it was Nelly Corda, but she was just like, one of my biggest advice to people is like, when they're trying to, lower their scores. It's like, get off the range, go play.
Mm,
you know like, get out there and play. Like, sure, of course you need your swing practice, especially if you're going through a swing change or whatever, but like, get out on the course and play, and like, repetition, like, do the things, find yourself in these like weird, situations, get, be in the rough, be in the sand. The more you end up
totally.
in these, put yourself in those positions, or you're really struggling through those last three holes, but you get through it anyway. The more you do that, the more it becomes like second nature, and it doesn't
Yeah,
feel.
it's I love that. It's like replicating real life conditions, or as my golf coach puts it, like put yourself under the gun, basically. Try and replicate that kind of uh yeah, like because range is just I mean, it's very easy just to get into robotic, mechanical, like, and yeah, it's good to a point, but I totally agree with that one. The so the develop the design, even the idea that came to you, the light bulb moment that came to you for the Peloton golf program. Tell us about the origins of that. Then tell us the story.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like I said, I became really obsessed with the game in really in 2020, even though started trying to do a few swings in 2019, but it was 2020 when I started and took lessons too. It was the first time I took lessons, was in 2020. And yeah, because I had a background in fitness, I guess maybe, I was looking at the sport from that perspective of like, body swing mechanics and kinematic sequence was really interesting to me, because I was interested in the body and the way the body moves. So that was something that I just like naturally was drawn to. And my coach at the time, his name's Gary Ware, also a Scottish man.
Nice.
um, yes, he really helped build my swing from the ground up, and uh, helped grow this passion for golf that I had. But he also was somebody who talked a lot about, body swing mechanics, and talked a lot about the kinematic sequence. And, he was totally willing to like nerd out with me on those types of things. And, after a while, after playing for a few years, I decided to dive a little deeper and got my certification, my TPI certification, from Titleist Performance Institute, for fitness. And, I had been, even before that, I'd been kind of trying it out on myself and on my husband, like guinea pigging us, like going, creating programs for each other to help, our golf game.
Mm,
And really, it's not so much. I think one of the things that I want people to understand when they choose to, dive into doing things in fitness, whether it's, doing strength classes or mobility classes to kind of improve what their body can do. I think that we need to caution and make sure that people are also aware that, like, this is more about supporting a swing and not building a swing. The work of building a swing, you have to do that, on your own, on the golf course, on the
sure.
range, or with a golf coach or whatever. But the thing about, about golf swings is like, and we kind of touched on this before, is that it's totally dependent on what your body can do. And so the more that your body can do, the more you can do with your swing. And so that's kind of, what I think about when I'm creating these classes, and whether it's mobility or strength. So it's like, let's try to be able to do more with our bodies so we can then do more with our swing. Or, the other thought or, avoid injury.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Um, I'm gonna take us back to the metaphorical space for a second, okay? And so, again, something, and this is my favorite of the quotes I've seen on your Instagram. I saw something where you said, it's, I think I quote you right, the best weight you'll ever lose is not caring about what other people think of you.
Yeah.
And I think I brought that up because I wanted to talk about weight loss because that's an issue for me at the moment. So I'm going to talk about that, but I also want to talk about the actual meaning behind that quote that I just read.
Yeah.
But let's talk about the weight loss thing for a second, right? Because again, if I think about where I get most self conscious, I guess, Selena, is, I've always been, because I'm quite a tall guy, I'm like 6'3". I think I can hide it a bit better, but I struggle with diet. You know, I'm not in good habits at the moment, and I think when I don't feel so good about my body, um, you know, it does rub off in many areas of my life, but on the golf course too. So I absolutely do want to wear athletic stuff and look great and feel great, but I'm wearing baggier stuff on the golf course. And I guess maybe my question is more around like, you know, what asides diet, and if I'm going to get the most out of like my Peloton subscription, for instance, like where what are the not the hacks, but like what's the best form of fitness to really tackle weight loss or fat loss or whatever?
Yeah. So that's a tough question because I think, everybody is so different. We're chemically made up differently, right? And I talk about this a lot with like when I talk about postpartum things. Like all of our experiences are so different. Our hormone levels are
Mm,
very different. Our birth experience are different. And it's kind of the same for men and women, and that, like, we're not talking about postpartum with men, but it's the same. It's like you just said it, you're 6'3", you're built differently. Someone else could be 5'7" or 5'9", and maybe they're shorter and have like always had a really easy time building muscle, and maybe someone is taller and naturally thinner and has a really hard time building muscle. And it's just, we're so different. So it really varies person to person. And this is
mm.
going to sound like, there's no easy answer here essentially on
No,
like
sure.
how to tackle um, fat loss. And I think uh, some people respond to certain variables differently, and more positively than others. But there always is, like, I think diet is such a huge one,
Mm,
um, because I've been through ups and downs of weight loss journey myself, and I could even be essentially at my healthiest and be heavier, and be at a point in my life where I'm not as healthy and not have as much weight. So I think, if you're completely unwilling to look at nutrition, then it is important to move your body consistently. Um, but the truth is, if you want to get like snatched, as people say, I hate that term, but if you really do, if that's something that's really important to you and you want to have like the abs and like, nutrition can't be ignored. It just can't. It's
mm.
unless you're like 20 and um like
No, well,
it's like
I'm not.
not
I'm approaching 40 fast now, and like those 20s are a distant memory. But no, do you know something you said there? It's very very interesting. Something you said about I could be sort of heavier on the scales, but actually I'm in a healthier place, and actually my wife and I just came back from. We were back in Scotland for a while, and just last week, and we took this photograph on the steps of the resort and the hotel that we normally stay at, and we put it side by side with like the same trip because we go to the same place every year in January to celebrate my mother and father-in-law's wedding anniversary, and it's like 2 or 3 years, no, maybe 2, 3, 4 years ago when I'd lost a lot of weight. It was actually interestingly, it was during COVID. I was caning the Peloton. My diet was on point because I was like working from home, and it was like all of a sudden. But if I look at myself then, I was actually almost quite gaunt and too slim in the face, and I put myself side by side. I'm like, do you know what? Actually, objectively, I'm in the best place in my. Oh, there's my AI thumbs up. I'm in the best place in my life that I've been in quite some time. I might be heavier as a number on the scales, but actually, how I feel up here is every bit as good, actually, as it was back then. And also, actually, it is nutrition is probably the issue for me at the moment. And they say, like, healthy body, healthy mind, healthy gut, healthy mind. You
totally.
are what you eat, and all these things, right? So, and sorry, the
Yeah.
final point, and I'll throw it to you, is the other thing you said Honestly, deep down, I'm not that motivated about the six pack. I'm not too bothered about that. Actually, what matters most to me is being sharp up here. Because if I'm sharp up here, I'm great in every other area of my life. And actually, I've got a better degree of acceptance of what's going on down here when up here
Totally.
is good. Right. So,
Yeah, so there's so many studies that are coming out now that are showing that that adding hit style workouts to your workout regimen is showing extreme benefits to brain health and cognitive function. So that is, and if running isn't your thing and you don't want to really push yourself to max heart rate in a run because maybe I don't know, maybe you have a knee issue or whatever, like get on a bike and do it. I think that if that's the other thing, it's like, what are your priorities? What are the things that are going to make you feel the best? What is most important to you? And then that's kind of how you can like plan your workouts. I did post something recently about kind of a great all around approach if your goal is, if you don't have a specific goal, right? So like if you're not like, I'm training for a marathon, or if your goal isn't like, I want to do a bodybuilding contest, or if your general goal is like general, like good health, and like I was saying, longevity, bone health, like muscle retention, and just like generally like feeling good, and being healthy, then I set out what I think is kind of like the ideal like week of workouts. And um, you can check out that post, but I could also just like go over it real
sure.
quick if you want.
Let's do it. Yeah, let's do it.
I think that if you do like a 45 to 60 minute, like um, high zone two, low zone three cardio exercise, like something that's like endurance style, easy jog, power walk, hike, a low impact ride, something like that for day one. Day two, you would have like either lower body or upper body. You can switch the days, but so you have one lift that's focused on lower body, another day where you have a lift that's focused on upper body. And I would say never usually more than 60 minutes with that lift. And you can kind of, depending on where you are in your journey, you can start easy, start with 20, build it up. But you don't ever need really more than 60 minutes. And obviously always make sure to do some warm ups and mobilities within that. Upper body, one lower body. And then I would say a third day that you can do like kind of a more of a like full body approach if you'd like something with that has compound movements, something that includes power. So, making sure that you're doing that stuff like power comes from the ground up. So like jump squats or mountain climbers, or maybe snatches, or doing things, compound moves that involve power. And you could also do like a boot camp style workout if you want, if you prefer that day. And then always including at least one day where you have a hit style workout. So where you do that, you push that max heart rate day where you really push 20 to 30 minutes of doing hit style work.
Nice. And that's a recent post that you put out, did you
Yeah.
say?
I
Yeah.
think if you just, it might not make you the most, like, again, snatched, right? Because we're not, if you're not going for something that's specific for like bodybuilding, but you just like want to feel strong, want to be in, good physical standing. I think that's kind of the optimal way to just like do something when you're not training for anything specifically. That's kind of the great like base, in my opinion. It kind of hits everything.
That I'll check that out, and I'll encourage everyone else to check that out too.
Yeah. And
Um,
and having said that, if you are someone who, you also could take the approach of doing full body, both of those lift days, the lower body and upper body day. And if you're somebody who's interested in like training for like golf or something like that, you could just include movements that really focus on single leg work, or movements that focus on offsetting, movements that have some rotational moves or anti-rotation moves in there. So you're kind of specifically attacking those needs that you would have for golf specific workout.
yeah, that's great. It's a few of my takeaways from what you've described there are something very holistic, which is going to have a set of universal benefits that can be applied across golf. It can be applied across various aspects of your life, but there's variety in there as well, which is probably quite important, I would imagine, as well, because, like, again, I have a tendency, say, to just go big on a certain thing. And if I'm doing hit, it's like nothing but hit that week, or it's like I'm just majoring on cycling, and it's like you probably want to mix things up as well, I suppose.
Yeah. You can
Yeah,
totally, yeah. And I think it makes things less boring. I think, at least, for me, it keeps me coming back. It keeps things interesting. And you can also mix up the type of workouts if you just know you're kind of doing these right. Like, for instance, when I said that, one day where you have that like high zone 2, low zone 3 day for 45 to 60 minutes, like that one week could be a bike ride. The other week, it could be like a nice, easy jog. It could be a walk plus run. Another week, it could be like you set your, treadmill to a 10-degree incline and go for a
mm,
walk, so
yeah,
it can really change, but you're still getting that cardiovascular benefit. And and then with the kind of split style strength stuff, it's, it is beneficial if you choose similar exercises week to week, at least like for 4 to 6 weeks, but you could always switch it up. And if you're going, the full body approach, it makes it a little less boring, and you don't really have to be so, again, if you're kind of going for general health, you really don't have to be so dogmatic about it. It can just be something that you're doing to kind of ensure that you're hitting those, checking off the box. You know what I mean?
yeah, for sure, absolutely. Well, we're just a couple of minutes after 10 a.m. your time, and I promised you I'd try and get us wrapped up in time to let you get going. But maybe just final thing is looking ahead, 2025. Are you a goal setter, Selena?
To be honest, not really. I'm not a huge goal setter. I kind of have like, I'm kind of someone who like goes, okay, there are a few things that I would like to work towards, and I'd rather, I kind of like to do the thing that's right in front of me rather than go like, oh, there's this like huge big thing that I want in the future.
Yeah.
I found
So
that
you more
just
have
kind of
like
like,
a development plan, like
yeah,
iterative kind of like building skill, building rather
yes.
than just like going after targets. Okay, I like that.
I just found that like in my life in general, like the most wonderful things have kind of happened because I've just been putting my 100% into whatever it is that's like right in front of me. And then a door opens up because of that. So I
Hmm.
just kind of go, okay, what is the next thing that I need to do right now that I think is aligned with my purpose or aligned um, with what it is that feels purposeful and right for me. And then I just, put my heart into that and see where it leads to, kind of, So, like right now, for instance, and I'm guessing you're like, what are your goals for 2025? So right now, like some of the things I'm working on, um, I am getting back into my golf game because I had to take a hiatus. I had some like, actually had some issues with my back, and I had to work around that had to do with childbirth, actually, some pelvic floor
Hmm.
things that like I've been working on. And
Sure.
now I'm getting back into the game. So I'm curious to see how that's going to be. I'm really excited about swinging a golf club again. I'm also going to be launching two more Strength for Golfers classes in April with Peloton. So that's exciting. Um, and I'm trying to think of some other things that I'm looking forward to in 2025. My husband and I are also trying for baby number 2. We've been trying for the last year, so we're
Amazing.
going for it. And I think those are kind of my focuses right now. It's like family and work, and also getting back into my golf game and seeing what happens. So I haven't been able to swing, but I have been able to putt. So I'm wondering, I have gotten much better at putting. So I wonder if it's just kind of even out, even if my swing is wonky, because my putting has gotten so much better.
Well, hey, look, putting's probably the part of the game I enjoy the most. Like, and that's probably because it is a strength for me too. So, enjoy that and really, cherish that strength that you have. I, do you know, we are running out of time, and I'm conscious of your time. But this thing about, again, so the stuff you said about pelvic floor
Yeah.
intrigues me because my wife was saying to me the other day how, again, recently gave birth to our daughter. There are a number of mums who we've met who are very physically active, really into sport. And it sounds like they've had a few issues as it relates to pelvic floor, for example. So I guess, for them and for their benefit, or any woman going through that, like, kind of
Yeah.
what have you learned through that experience that they could
Yeah.
do to
I'm
take
glad you
care?
asked that because I think it was something that I went into so blindly, and I really, I just, I was incredibly shocked at what recovery looked like postpartum. I thought it was going to be a lot easier, to be honest with you. And again, everyone's birth story is so different, so it's unpredictable. Some women might not have these types of issues, and also C-section versus. So it's like
Sure.
there's so many different things that we might be going through childbirth. But I think the pelvic floor strength is one thing that's kind of universal, because just the pregnancy itself puts a lot of pressure on your pelvic floor and changes things, and your anatomy changes. Straight up, your anatomy changes.
Yeah.
um, so yeah, I think I wish that I had, now looking back, I wish that I had known more about this, and that I had worked with a pelvic floor therapist ahead of potentially even getting pregnant and throughout my pregnancy. Um, and then to really get on it immediately after my pregnancy as well. When your pelvic floor is disrupted, the way that it becomes disrupted during pregnancy, and even more so if you have trauma, birth trauma, or anything like that, or um, it is incredibly difficult to get back, or I even hate to use the word back, because you'll never get back to whatever it was before. It's just something different now. And so you really do have to be so considerate about working with your pelvic floor to ensure that you are able to move in the way you want to. So spinal health is a huge one as well, right? Because that support. So you hear a lot of people talk about mom back, and that's that lower back hurting. That's your lumbar spine usually.
Hmm.
Like um, a lot of that, most of the time, that has to do with your pelvic floor, and needing to strengthen your pelvic floor and to get it to a good place again, because so that your core can support your spine. And for golf, that's so important. Um, so I think, yeah, something that I would recommend is do your best to get out there and get as much information as you can, and work with a pelvic floor therapist if that's possible. And if it's not possible, and like in the US, I don't think we actually have anything that's like state sanctioned or anything like that, but there are private networks for this sort of thing. See if your health insurance can cover it. Like, I 100% recommend working with a pelvic floor therapist, or getting online and trying to find, free information that can help you work on strengthening your pelvic floor, because that is absolutely key and crucial to your health and your longevity postpartum.
Great. Well, I mean, I know some of them will be listening too, I hope. And so, part of the cool thing about this podcast too, and I always intended it to be that there's a core audience that listen to this who are diehard golfers, but I care about being inclusive and trying to share that love of golf with a new audience, with people who, like you, the once upon a time pre-golf Selena, but it's kind of people out there who for whatever reason will go, nah, golf's not for me. But maybe listening to all of the what you've just said, or parts of it, will inspire someone.
Golf is for everybody. Golf is for everybody.
For sure, absolutely. Selena, loved the conversation. Thanks so much. Um, And yeah, I'll say to you, like I say to everyone, remember to embrace the rough and cherish the fairway.
Thanks so much.